You're at a party, people are laughing, the music is just loud enough to fill the silence between conversations. Someone hands you a drink, someone else says your name, and you smile. You nod, you say something back. And from the outside, everything looks completely fine. But inside there's this strange, heavy quiet, like you're watching everything through glass. Like everyone else got the instructions for how to be here, and yours got lost somewhere along the way. And the worst part isn't the feeling itself. The worst part is that you can't explain it because you're not alone. You're surrounded by people. So why does it feel like you're the only person in the room? If you've ever felt that this video is for you, and I promise you by the end of it, you're going to understand something about yourself that most people spend their entire lives never figuring out. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Loneliness is not about how many people are around you. Science has known this for decades, but somehow it never makes it into the conversation. The clinical definition of loneliness isn't the absence of people, it's the perceived absence of meaningful connection. That word perceived is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because it means your brain can decide you're lonely even when you're physically surrounded by an entire room of human beings. And your brain makes that decision faster than you think. We're talking milliseconds. Before you've finished a single sentence in a conversation, your nervous system has already scanned the room, read the micro-expressions on people's faces, measured the tone of their voices, and made a judgment call. Am I safe here? Do I belong here? Does anyone actually see me? Most of the time, that system works beautifully. It's the reason humans survived long enough to build cities and write books and make YouTube videos about their feelings. For most of human history, being excluded from your group wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a death sentence. No tribe meant no food, no shelter, no protection. So your brain evolved to treat social rejection the same way it treats physical danger. Here's the part that changes everything. Neuroscientists at UCLA ran a study where they put people in a brain scanner and had them play a virtual ball-tossing game. Halfway through the game, the other players who were actually just a computer program stopped including the person in the scanner. They just stopped throwing the ball. And what lit up in the brain? The anterior cingulate cortex. The exact same region that activates when you feel physical pain. Being left out of a ball-tossing game for 3 minutes activated the pain centers of the human brain. So when you feel that ache in your chest at a party where nobody seems to really see you, that's not you being dramatic. That's your nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Now, here's where it gets more complicated. Because most of the people who experience this kind of loneliness, the crowded room kind, the invisible kind, aren't people who have no friends. They're not isolated. They're often surrounded by people who genuinely care about them. So what's going wrong? Think about the last time you were at a social event and felt completely disconnected. What were you doing? If you're honest, you were probably performing. You were running a background program in your head that was constantly monitoring, how am I coming across? Did that joke land? Were they actually interested in what I just said, or were they just being polite? Should I have said that differently? Why did they look away when I was talking? That internal monitoring system has a name. Psychologists call it self-focused attention, and in small doses, it's useful. It's what keeps you from accidentally insulting your boss at the Christmas party, but when it runs on overdrive, it does something devastating. It pulls you out of the present moment and locks you inside your own head. And you cannot genuinely connect with someone else when you're trapped inside your own head. You're physically in the room, but psychologically somewhere else entirely, running simulations, calculating risks, managing impressions. And the cruel irony is that the very thing you're doing to try to connect, performing, optimizing, monitoring, is the exact thing that makes real connection impossible. And social media has made this 10 times worse. I want you to think about what you actually do when you open Instagram or TikTok at a party where you feel out of place. You open up a window into a world where everyone looks like they're having the best time of their lives. Everyone is somewhere beautiful, with people who adore them, laughing at something genuinely funny, and your brain, remember, the one that evolved to constantly measure your social standing, looks at that and draws a conclusion. Everyone else has figured out how to belong. You're the only one who hasn't. But here's what the research actually shows. A study published in the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology found that limiting social media use to 30 minutes per day led to significant reductions in loneliness and depression in just 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Not because social media is evil, but because the version of human connection it shows you is a highlight reel, and your nervous system can't tell the difference between a real social threat and a curated Instagram story. It responds to both the same way. It starts the alarm. It starts the comparison. And slowly, quietly, it convinces you that everyone else is living a life you somehow missed the invitation to. Here's what's really happening underneath all of it. Your brain has a threat detection system. Ancient, fast, and brutally efficient. When it senses social rejection, even the possibility of it, it fires the same neural pathways as physical pain. The mind, that dark voice inside, it's not your enemy. It's a guard dog that learned to bark at shadows. Think about how a guard dog behaves. It was trained to protect you, and it did its job. Probably in situations where the threat was real. Someone left you out, someone laughed at you, someone made you feel like being fully yourself was a risk that had consequences. And the dog learned to growl before the threat even arrived. It learned to treat everyone as a potential danger. And now, years later, it's still growling. At parties, at quiet dinners, at people who are trying to reach you. Not because the threat is real, but because the dog doesn't know the difference between then and now. And here's the thing most people never understand. You can't train a guard dog by fighting it. The more you try to suppress it, argue with it, shame it into silence, the louder it gets. The only thing that actually works is understanding what it's protecting you from. And then, slowly, showing it evidence that you're safe. And then something shifts. Your intuition already knows what your mind is, too scared to admit. You're not broken. You're just disconnected from yourself first, then from others. The connection you're looking for out there, it starts right here. Inside, there's a concept in psychology called self-compassion, developed by researcher Kristen Neff, and it does something counterintuitive. It says that the path to connection isn't becoming more likable, more polished, more interesting. It's becoming more honest, with yourself first, about what you're actually feeling, about what you actually need, about the fact that the performance is exhausting and it isn't working. Because here's what the research shows. People who practice self-compassion, who can acknowledge their own pain without judgment, report significantly higher levels of social connectedness. Not because they became more socially skilled, but because when you stop fighting yourself, you have energy left to actually be present with someone else. The loneliness you feel in a room full of people is a signal, not a diagnosis, not a permanent condition. A signal that says, something about the way I'm showing up right now isn't working. And signals can be listened to. Signals can be understood. Signals can change. So, what do you do with all of this? Because understanding the problem is one thing. Living with it is another. And I want to be honest with you here, there's no hack. There's no trick that makes this disappear overnight. But there are 3 things, grounded in actual research, that genuinely move the needle, and I'm going to give them to you straight. The first one is this. Stop performing and start showing up. And I know that sounds simple, but I want you to really understand what performing means, because most people don't realize they're doing it until someone points it out. Performing is when you laugh a half second before you've actually processed whether something was funny. Performing is when someone asks how you're doing and you say, good, really good. Busy but good, without even pausing to check if that's true. Performing is when you're in a conversation and instead of actually listening to the other person, you're already composing your next sentence, editing it, optimizing it, making sure it lands the right way. That's not connection. That's 2 people's performances running in parallel, occasionally making eye contact. What showing up looks like is different. It's slower. It's less polished. It's saying honestly, I've been a little off this week when someone asks how you are and watching what happens next. Because here's what the research on vulnerability consistently shows. When you offer something real, something unpolished, something true, other people almost always respond in kind. Not because they're being polite. Because your honesty gives them permission to stop performing too. And suddenly you're not 2 performances in a room, you're 2 actual people. That shift can happen in 30 seconds. But someone has to go first. The second thing is to stop counting connections and start feeling them. We live in a world that has completely broken our intuition about what social nourishment actually feels like. We measure connection in followers, in likes, in how many people showed up to our birthday, in how full our social calendar is, and then we wonder why, with all of that, we still feel empty. Your nervous system does not count. It weighs. It's not asking how many people you talked to today. It's asking, did anyone actually see me today? Did I say anything true? Did anyone respond to that truth with something real of their own? One conversation like that, just one, does more for your mental health than an entire weekend of surface-level socializing. There's a study out of the University of Arizona that tracked people's daily social interactions and measured their well-being. What they found wasn't that happy people had more conversations. It was that happy people had more substantive ones, more moments of genuine exchange, more questions that actually required thought to answer, more silences that were comfortable, instead of anxious. You don't need more people in your life. You need more depth with the ones already there. And depth doesn't require the perfect moment or the perfect setting. It just requires one person willing to say something honest and another person willing to actually hear it. The third thing, and this one is the most powerful and the hardest, is to start treating your mind's social predictions like the unreliable narrator that it is. Because your mind, when it comes to social situations, lies to you constantly. Not maliciously, not because it's broken, but because it's working from a threat model that was built when you were much younger, in situations that may have taught you that being seen was dangerous, that being too much, or too little, or too different had consequences. And so it learned to run predictions, worst-case scenarios, to tell you things like, they're probably tired of you, you talked too much, you came on too strong, they were just being polite, they don't actually want you there. And here's the thing about those predictions, they feel like facts. They arrive with the same certainty as a memory, but they are not facts, they are stories. And the way you start to unhook from them is by asking one simple question every time your mind makes a social prediction. What is the actual evidence? Not the feeling. Feelings are real, but they are not evidence. What did they actually say? What did they actually do? Did they end the conversation, or did you? Did they stop responding, or did your mind just decide they would? Most of the time, if you're honest, there is no evidence. There is a feeling your mind has dressed up in the costume of certainty, and the moment you see that clearly, something changes. The prediction loses its grip. The alarm gets quieter, and slowly, over time, you start to build a different kind of evidence, the real kind. Evidence that you showed up and were still okay. Evidence that you said something true and were still accepted. Evidence that the room is not as dangerous as your mind has been, insisting it is. You felt it, that room full of people, and that silence inside. But now you know what it is, and knowing that's where it stops having power over you, the version of you that's behind the glass, performing, monitoring, optimizing, that version can't be lonely, but it can't be loved either. And somewhere inside you, you already know that. So the next time you're in that room, surrounded by people, drowning in silence, try something different. Stop performing for 30 seconds. Ask someone a question you actually want to know the answer to. Say something true. Take the risk of being real. The connection you've been looking for has always been on the other side of that. Spoony and friends. Because everything you feel has an explanation.